The Event 201 scenario is fictional, but it's based on public health principles, epidemiologic modeling, and assessment of past outbreaks. In other words, we've created a pandemic that could realistically occur.
The scenario you will be presented with this morning could easily become a shared reality one day. I fully expect that we will be confronted by a fast-moving, highly lethal pandemic of a respiratory pathogen. In most parts of the world, due to lockdown, most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them.
The tools that are going to reduce deaths, the drugs, that's a global thing to get those out. And the thing that'll get us back to the world that we had before coronavirus is the vaccine and getting that out to all 7 billion people.
This is a global crisis. We are a global community when it comes to a crisis like this. And in future times, and there may well be future times where we require this, there's got to be much better structures in place to allow us to combat what is a global crisis with global efficacy.
Why not get people like Tony Blair involved to help us solve a national crisis? We have absolutely got to up the pace of vaccinations.
This country is a country of openness, of respect, of compassion, of the rule of law, of the rights of the individuals, of freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from crime, freedom to love who you want and not be judged for it, freedom to do what you want with your body. We're going to make sure in the coming weeks that anyone 12 or older who wants to get on a plane or a train be fully vaccinated. Freedom to do what you want with your body.
Can prove they've been tested and can prove that they've had the vaccine. So this is a very important, this pass is very, very important.
I support mandatory vaccines, period. I think every company should do it.
All right, I'll get the damn vaccine. Here's the deal, guys. I'll get the vaccine. You fucking leave me alone. And did that work? No. So stupid me.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real-world data.
Reports from our international colleagues, including Israel, suggest increased risk of severe disease amongst those vaccinated early. Given this body of evidence, we are concerned that the current strong protection against severe infection, hospitalization, and death could decrease in the months ahead, especially among those who are at higher risk or who were vaccinated earlier during the phases of our vaccination rollout.
Many scientists are beginning to believe that a vaccine against AIDS may be impossible to make and too dangerous to test.
If you take it and then a year goes by and everybody's fine, then you say, okay, that's good. Now let's give it to 500 people. And then a year goes by and everything's fine. You say, well, then now let's give it to thousands of people. And then you find out that it takes 12 years for all hell to break loose. And then what have you done?
Sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of vaccine. That is, it creates both B-cell and T-cell immunity. And it's done a better job of getting out to the world population than we have with vaccines.
Now, statisticians from Oxford University appear to have found an explanation for why that is happening. They say that when recording data, Public Health England looks at whether a person has ever tested positive for coronavirus and then whether they're still alive at a later date. So that means that anyone who's ever tested positive for coronavirus is included in the death figures, even if they've died from something else.
It's worth remembering again that the ONS rates are people who've got COVID on their death certificate. It doesn't necessarily mean they were infected because many of them haven't been tested, so we just need to understand the difference.
The particular problem is that if everybody thinks you can have some test at the airport that will answer whether you've got it or not. Unfortunately, it only works in 7% of the cases. So
the challenge is that the false positive rate is very high. So only 7% of tests will be successful in identifying those that actually have the virus.
Let me turn to you first, Professor Lee. You really don't believe in lockdowns. You think they're pointless. Why?
Well, I think at the very beginning of the epidemic, in March, there were genuine reasons for concern. But I think for several months now, it's been clear that this virus is not the new plague that it was feared that it would be. And yet we've continued to act as if it is that new plague.
It would inevitably lead to people losing their lives, people who are vulnerable and people who are elderly. Surely that's not acceptable.
Well, you're saying that nobody should die. I mean, we need to be able to have a grown-up conversation about death in our societies. The fact is, when you get to in your 80s, you have a high chance of dying of all diseases. In the UK, at least, the average age of death is about 82. The average age of death of COVID is a bit older than the average age of death. There's also a problem that in this phase of the pandemic, people have equated positive tests with cases. Now, this isn't correct. This is simply wrong. In the normal winter, we never obsessively test the population for any virus to the extent to which this virus is being tested for.